All right, greetings everybody. Hope you're doing well today. Let's get going on day 4 material in our Startup Showdown. I'm not going to be with you during class today, so I'm going to take you in this video through each of the slides, give you a little bit of insight into the material that I've got prepared for you during today's class, and ultimately what we're doing and focusing on during this period is structuring an elevator pitch. It's going to be all tied to your idea, your problem, and your solution that you've been spending so much time developing in the last couple of classes. So one of the things that might be beneficial to you is on another tab, if you haven't already, go ahead, go into your Google Drive and pull up the previous day's slides from day 3 where you had your lean canvas all filled out. That might assist you as you begin going through some of the steps that are going to be in class today. So what is an elevator pitch? We've talked about how the Startup Showdown is a pitch competition. Well, it's not a long presentation you're going to give, but at the end of this project, right during the last week of school, you are going to give a pitch for this idea. You're going to try and sell us on the fact that this would be a great solution to a problem that you've really thought through and that you've spent some time validating that a lot of people have this problem. And an elevator pitch is really different from other types of pitches that you might come across or see given to you from other students or other teachers. A pitch, think of it as you have 30 to 60 seconds to make it count. You have 30 to 60 seconds to sell the idea, to hook the audience, to get them to believe in your idea, and to be able ultimately to go along with you on that journey of believability and investment, hopefully, in taking next steps. It's often used in competitions, networking events, even conversations. Could be argued that a lot of conversations are pitches for one thing or another. This that I'm going to show you right here is a short pitch, but it's an award-winning pitch from a couple of years ago. And I want you to listen for some believability factor. I want you to see if this guy makes you engaged. I want you to think about the overall way that this short pitch makes you feel. Let's listen to him.
It was my second week of college, and I was out of shampoo. So I took an Uber to the nearest Walmart, and by the end of the day, that bottle of shampoo ended up costing me a little bit over $20 after you factor in the price of the Uber. I needed college supply. Imagine the Fruit of the Month Club, but at the beginning of every month, rather than fruit, you receive toiletries, things like shampoo or soap or deodorant. In a random anonymous sample of 14% of the people living in my hall at the University of Dayton, 42% of people surveyed said that they would purchase a subscription to College Supply if it existed, and just over 30% said that they would at least consider it, because it would increase time, decrease stress, and improve the overall health of every user. As a current freshman in college, I am the target demographic for College Supply, and I can tell you that it is much needed and an underserved market because it's college simplified. Thank you.
He says it's college simplified. He's even got his own tagline that he applies at the end, a vision statement, a statement of impact, something he's already thought through to try and get you to come along with him on his journey. He believes it. There's no doubt that he believes that College Supply is a very needed solution to a real problem that he's validated. And that's a lot of what you've done as you've gone through these previous days in this particular project. I want to ask you a couple questions real quick, and after we go through this together, you can feel free to go back to that video and watch it a second time. But did that previous pitch achieve these goals? And ask yourself and see what your feelings are. Did it clearly describe the problem and the solution? What was the problem? The problem that was that on a short glance, it would actually cost him a lot of money to go and get a needed supply, right? It's not as easy as just the $3 maybe for the shampoo that it ultimately would cost a college kid if they didn't have it on hand. And did his solution seem like it could be doable? Something that would show up on maybe a recurring schedule and provide him the different articles of bathroom toiletries, items, hygiene items. I'm sure you had it for a bunch of different types of things that college students might need all the time. Next, did it highlight what makes the idea unique? Was he able to differentiate it from alternatives? And if he didn't, then there's a definite place for improving a pitch like that, right? Did it show who it's for and why it matters? He clearly painted the picture of this is for college students. We've talked to college students that they would use it. He definitely sells why it matters and why it's such a needed solution. And then the last bullet, did it leave the audience curious and wanting to learn more? You don't have to be all into the problem that he's solving to be able to see the fact that he believes it. It does leave me more curious, and as if I was going to invest in this idea, I would be full of questions that I then want to go back and forth with this guy on. Usually, having no questions at the end of a pitch is usually a sign of a bad pitch. A great pitch should put me on the edge of my seat. It should get me really interested in the idea so that it is simple to come up with questions that I want to know more about. Because keep in mind, a pitch in the way that we're describing it, an elevator pitch, it's not long. You don't have enough time in an elevator pitch to explain all the details of how the solution would work. But you do have enough time to be able to establish and teach someone about the overarching idea of your business model, that's for certain. Here's the core elements of a strong pitch that we're going to be working with as you go forward. And when we get to the day that you will be giving your pitch, these are the things that I'm going to be looking for in each of your pitches. I am looking to see, did you make a conscious effort to hook me as an audience member? In other words, grabbing attention in the very first sentence. If you just start your pitch, hi, my name is Justin. I am solving the problem of bicycle tires going flat. That type of introduction is going to lose a lot of points. I'm putting it plain as day right up here at the very top as a core element of a strong pitch. You have got to put in some energy and some inflection in your voice. You've got to be able to somehow grab some interest. We'll talk about different ways that you can do that during this video, but there has to be something there. There has to be some engagement there. Remember, you came to an entrepreneurship and business academy. This is where you should be able to show your excitement, be able to show what you've learned, your passion for what you're about to do in these next 3 years. It shouldn't be hard to get your energy level up to do that. Then we've spent a good amount of time validating your problem and working through your problem. Is it a good problem to solve? Is it solvable? Does it need solving? Well, here's where you are going to sell us on that fact. What are you solving, right? What is your problem? And it should be very clear and succinct. We have put a lot of effort into making a very clear and specific problem statement. So you've got everything in your arsenal already to just be able to plug this stuff into some of your commentary in your pitch. Then a solution. How do you solve it? We've also created solution statements. So this should be a pretty small amount of work for you to pull together the right way to describe your particular solution. And then from the last class, when we were working on our lean canvases, we started going into more depth about our customer segments. And we started to talk about unique value propositions and our vision or impact statements. Things like, who are you helping? What makes your idea different or better than other alternatives that are already on the market, right? And a vision or impact statement, think of that guy in that previous pitch. What future do you want to create? There's got to be some type of summation statement that ties everything together in a very short pitch, like an elevator pitch that you'll be given. There's going to be a number of different ways that you can do that creatively. But understand you want to end with a bang in the same way that you begin with a bang. You want people to remember you. I'm not saying do anything crazy or foolish or outlandish, but there has to be something that pulls me in and makes me want to ask questions at the end. Let's look at an example of an elevator pitch, and let's just look at the commentary and see if it actually addresses all of these different core components that we talked about in that previous slide. I'll read it for us. I remember walking into my freshman English class on September 4th, 2024. I had forgotten the date of my first exam in college. I'll never allow myself to forget that day. Every year, college students miss important deadlines because they're juggling too much. Our app, Deadline Buddy, keeps students organized by syncing class schedules, assignments, and reminders in one place. Unlike generic planners, it's made for college life, built by students for students. We've already interviewed 100 students, and 78 said they'd use it weekly. We believe we can help students stress less and succeed more. End of pitch. That is probably a 60-second pitch. I didn't time it, but I bet we're close to 60 seconds there. We're not talking about a long presentation. We're talking about a pitch that conveys an idea and a pitch that does it very succinctly, hits all of these different areas, and explains as you go all the work that you have been doing. We can see in that particular example, it definitely had a hook. It's talking about their experience in that very first freshman English class. They're talking about the problem, they address it. They're talking about a solution, which is their Deadline Buddy. It's an app in their case. They're talking about their customer, who it's for. They're also talking about the value or the proof of how many students have already said that they would be using this. And then, of course, they end it with an impact statement. We believe we can help students stress less and succeed more. That's the vision that they want to put forward as they go through their pitch. They want to leave you with that idea. There's a lot of different ways that you can make it engaging. We're going to watch a video right here that's a brief introduction to a handful of different pitch approaches. This video is created by an author of a book who talks about creatively different ways to go about pitching, and it's a great book. So he uses some of his excerpts from that book in this video. So there's a lot of different elements that you can add to make yours have a little bit more flair, a little bit more flavor. See if some of these speak to you, because if you are stuck for how to make yours interesting or engaging, these might be great ways to go about it.
One of my favorite things to write was the pitch chapter because, you know, I'm a writer and I find myself pitching all the time, and I wanted to learn how to do it better. I identified 6 new pitches for the 21st century. So the Pixar pitch is modeled on the narrative structure of Pixar films, and a story artist for Pixar named Emma Coates essentially revealed the source code of this. Once upon a time, every day, one day, because of that, until finally, blank. Just fill in those blanks, and it ends up being powerful. We don't see the world only as a set of logical propositions. We see it as a set of episodes. And by enlisting the power of story in a pitch, which is something we don't do that much, it ends up being a very, very effective way to get your message across. Email is a pitch. Get over it. An email is a pitch. It's a plea for attention. It's a plea to engage. The effective email subject lines fall into 2 categories. They have to be either the category of utility, they're very useful to people, or curiosity. They pique people's curiosity. Anything in between, anything that combines the two, doesn't work very well. Obama did this very well in the campaign. He sent out a lot of emails, but the most popular email, the subject line was, "Hey." Well, think about how many times you open an email that doesn't have a subject line. Some people end up opening those first. Wow, because they're curious. One of my favorites is the rhyming pitch. Seems kind of cheesy, if not sleazy, which rhymes. Rhymes end up increasing what's called processing fluency. And when people are able to process something more fluently, they absorb it more, they understand it better. There was a trial of O.J. Simpson, the former football star, who was accused of murdering his wife and her friend. They found a glove on the crime scene. And so the prosecutor said, well, of course it's your glove, try it on, and he can't get the glove on his hand. In the closing statement, the late Johnny Cochran said to the jury, if it doesn't fit, you must acquit. What's remarkable now is that 18 years later, people remember that. If it doesn't fit, you must acquit. questions are active, statements are somewhat passive. So if I just make an assertion to you, you listen. Okay, cool. You're listening. But if I ask you a question, you inevitably have to respond. A great example of this is Ronald Reagan in 1980, where the economy was in the tank, and he could have said, your economic condition has deteriorated over the last 48 months. Instead, he said, are you better off now than you were 4 years ago? And that's more persuasive. That's more likely to move people, because what happens? They think, am I better off? They start thinking about it, and they begin to articulate their own reasons for agreeing with you. So don't you think we should all use more question pitches? Tweeting is a form of pitching, and there's some evidence showing that the most important thing you can do in pitching via Twitter is give people good information. Even if it's self-promotional, people tend to dig it. And also questions. All right, questions via Twitter end up being really effective too. One of them is the one-word pitch. The idea in the world right now is you want ownership of one word. So when people think of you, they think of that word. When people say that word, they think of you. And actually, it turns out that President Obama did a pretty good job of this, because his word in 2012 was forward. All of the ads, all the public events had that word, forward. And so he was able to distill his message into one word. The pitch process, when it works well, is inherently collaborative. In some ways, pitch isn't quite the same word, because pitch implies I'm going to throw this to you and you're either going to catch it or not. It's much more interactive. We have to think of pitching not as saying I'm going to sell you on this right now, but essentially here's an invitation, an intriguing invitation to have a conversation.
To Sell is Human is about...
So that's a great video, maybe similar to the first where we had the example of the guy giving the pitch. Maybe, especially if you find yourself hitting a creative blank in how you're supposed to go about creating flair and energy and something memorable in your own pitch, maybe this video would be a great one for you to go back and try to apply some of those formats to your own problem and your solution. The one that hits me as being the one that could perhaps be the most effective for the largest number of people might be the Pixar pitch, where he has like a rudimentary template that he describes as it fits a lot of pitches. It fits a lot of ideas that you want to get across. And it ends with some kind of a vision statement like we've talked about in a previous slide. So that might be one of the very best that you could use for your purposes. In the next slide, here's going to be a template that I want you to intentionally use as you craft each sentence in your own pitch. Okay? Today you're going to have a good amount of time to work on your own. You are also going to have a little bit of time where you can collaborate and run this first draft of your pitch by a partner that's sitting near you as well. But this particular slide, again, is going to take you through the things that I want to see in every single one of your pitches. I want to see a hook. Think of what that could look like. Maybe a quick stat or a relatable frustration or some kind of bold statement. You don't have time in an elevator pitch to go crazy, do a whole lot of stuff that's theatrical. This requires you to be smart. Smart with your time, smart with your words. Be choosy with your words. You just don't have a lot of time to do it. You need to clearly and specifically identify what your problem is. You need to clearly and specifically discuss your solution, what your business does to help out with the problem that you've already outlined. You also need to talk about your customer segments. Who benefits from this particular solution? Who has this problem? More than anything, remember, all design should be user-centric. This should be very wrapped around your end user, who is your would-be customer, right? So your customer segment is huge. And then you can probably use the sequence here from start to finish. It might help someone, but then start to bring it into a conclusion where you start to talk about unique value that your particular business concept provides, right? Why it's better or different from something that's already there. And then a great way to wrap it up in totality is to create an impact or a vision statement. What change are you trying to make? What future do you envision if this solution becomes reality? That's what an impact or a vision statement should do for you. On the next slide, you've got a blank text box right here, and I advise you to take your time, craft carefully all of the words that you intend to use. Don't have it be overly wordy. Description is good, but one of the things I'm going to ask you to do, you'll see it when we get to the homework slide in a little bit. The next time you come to class, I want you to be able to start to give this from memory. So the more difficult you make it for yourself by writing extravagant sentences using big words, it is going to be harder to memorize word for word. But that is something that we are going to work on doing. Once you've gotten your rough draft created, yes, the next thing that I want you to do is to share that rough pitch with a partner. And at first, you might not be able to do it from memory. In fact, I highly expect that you won't be able to. But your partner, as you read it to them and as you start to put some inflection in your voice and use some energy to get some attention, your partner should be able to give you feedback on things like, what was their level of engagement with it? Did it do it for them? What would they have been on the edge of their seat as you were given it? Or would it just be like, no, we're just doing this because you're checking the box. You're required to do this for class. That engagement factor is really important. Partners, if you listen to your partner and it's just not there, do them a favor and tell them it's lacking. You're going to lose some points for that. Help them identify which areas that this thing struggles in, because there may be some at first. Partners, be sure that you comment on clarity. The way that they've got their problem and their solution written out, is it clear? If it's not clear what they're offering and what they say that this business model is supposed to do, you should tell them where your confusion lies, because as a partner, that's your job. You're there to collaborate, to give feedback, and real honest feedback at that. I also want you to think and try to grade your partner on confidence. Is the diction in their voice, is it confident in the solution that they are delivering? Or is the diction more like this? Here's an example. Well, I think that this business solution, it might work for people who maybe potentially have this problem right here. That doesn't sound real confident, right? We want to get rid of words like I think or I believe or I know, because of course we know. You are putting yourself into this. You're putting your energy into this. We know that this is how you feel. We know that you've done your homework as far as thinking about the problems, validating, is this a real problem that people have? So there should be some confidence that comes along with it. And then flow. Flow is important because I've given you some, in the previous slides, I've given you some sequence to how some of your points might be shared and how you could get them across. In fact, that pitch, the award-winning pitch that we looked at earlier, it follows the same sequence. It hooks the audience in. We talk about problems, solutions. We end up getting to customers, who it's for. We end up then getting to unique value propositions and vision and impact statements at the end. That's how an elevator pitch is designed to work. And then believability. Did you buy it? Do you think that somebody else will buy it? Do you think that Mr. Morris will tear it apart for this reason or another? Because it is going to be a sharp critique at the end of some of these things that I'm outlining as very important, right? So I want you to give your partners some real feedback. What do they think? What do they think in an honest way? Not trying to hurt feelings, but you'd be doing your partner a disservice if you don't go through that with them. So here's your homework. You're going to finalize the first draft of your elevator pitch, and you're going to practice with at least 2 people outside of class, right? And when you come to class, I want you next time to be ready to present your first full verbal draft from memory, not from reading. And that might take a couple of times to get used to the story that you're going to tell. The more story-driven that your rough draft is, the easier it's going to be for you to be able to remember that story. And then also, there's a second part of your homework after you've gotten your rough draft together. I told you earlier that I am piloting a book. I wrote a book for a college class that I was involved in earlier this year. So it's called Mastering the Art of Pitching for Entrepreneurs. It's something that I'm passionate about and that I feel like I'm a pretty credible expert in. I want you to read a couple of specific chapters in that book, in that first draft of a manuscript that I've created. We're going to pilot some of the material in the upcoming classes. So chapters 1 through 3, and it is linked on the following slides. So here is the book, Mastering the Art of Pitching for Entrepreneurs. Do yourself a favor, find that blue link where it says click here to access the text, and I want you to read chapters 1 through 3. It's not a tough read. It's not even a ton of pages because the pages are fairly small. And then I've got 3 questions that I want you to respond to on the final slide with your set today. You can read those questions for yourself, but I want you to reflect on what you read and respond in complete sentences. I want to see that everybody does that and starts to get some, some textbook type strategy down with why we give elevator pitches, what they're for, and how they differ from regular presentations that we see every day. So with that, that's all I've got for this class. That should take you the majority of class. I'd like to see and hear from the substitute that you are collaboratively working together, practicing your pitch after you have gone through some of these things. So there's plenty of material there to keep you busy throughout the entire class today. And then I will see you back in class next time. Please have this, and we very well may turn that in class next time I see you. So good luck with your first draft, and then I look forward to hearing you in an upcoming class.